Hi everyone, welcome back to Swedish Plant Guys. We get a ton of questions from you viewers, which is so much fun. However, we cannot give you an answer in the commentary section because when we try and answer your questions, it needs a small novel and we can't do that on every answer we give you. So our version of it is that we make these Q&A videos, and that is for you guys. What we try and do is that when we get a question a couple of times, we try and pull them together and make this Q&A video. So even if this question isn't exactly your question, it can probably be answered in the same way. So watch the Q&A videos and you will probably get an answer to your question. Now, starting off with question number 1. I got a Dracaena plant in winter, but it got frost bites while transporting it and the leaves are turning black and brown. This is a very common question. There are a lot of people that has gotten frost damage on their plants, like Dracaenas for instance is very frost sensitive and can get damage from that. But to answer this question I can also answer on the other side of the scale. If you have frost damage here, then you have sunburn on the other end. Now, what happens to the plant is exactly the same thing, because what happens is that the leaves are getting damaged. It's actually the cells in the leaves that are exploding. And when that happens, when you get those brown leaves, either if it's from frostbite or if it's from sunburn, it's the same thing. The cells have been damaged. So those leaves are never going to be well again. So if you have these type of leaves, then take those leaves off, because they are not functioning, they are not photosynthesizing anymore because the cells are dead. So take them away. It doesn't have to mean that the whole plant is dying. It just means that those leaves have done their purpose. So take them off. Question number 2. And this is concerning one of our latest videos, how to grow your plants bigger and thicker. And the question is, how about adding some sugar in water sometimes? Now this is concerning what I'm saying in that video, is that the food for the plant is actually not the fertilizer or the nutrients. The food for the plant is the photosynthesis, which gives, or in which the plant is creating sugar. So the question here is, can I add sugar to the water when I'm watering it, and maybe the plant can use that sugar instead? Now, there is this is physics and chemistry in a bigger form than I'm going to go into here. But I'll try and make this as easy as possible. No, you can't. And here is why. Because the plant needs to create that sugar in the photosynthesis process by itself. The roots cannot pick up that sugar and use it in the same way in the plant. And the reason is that the way the roots is sucking up water is that it's using osmosis. What that really means is that it's using pressure differences inside of the plant to suck up the water through the roots. And that pressure differences and it does that through osmosis. But if you add salt or sugar to that water, what you're actually doing is that you're making it harder for the plant to suck up the water. So by doing something you think will help the plant, you're actually making it more difficult for it. Now, this is a very simplified explanation for this. It's actually quite hard to explain the exact process. But my answer to you is no, never add sugar to the water. Add water and add some nutrients to the water to help the plant photosynthesize, create more food, and you will get a bigger, healthier plant. But never ever give nutrients to a plant that is not feeling well. Always give fertilizer or nutrients to a plant that is happy. Because otherwise you're doing exactly the same thing. because when you're adding the nutrients or the fertilizer, it is in salt form. So the exact same thing happens. The plant will have a problem. If it's not feeling well, it will get more problems sucking up the water through the roots. So we only give nutrients and fertilizer to a happy plant. Question number 3, and it's concerning our video about pumice or volcanic rock. Now, my question is, will it be all right if I totally remove the soil from the plant before planting it into pumice medium? I have a plant here, and as we say in that video, what we always do is that we use the soil that is surrounding the roots when we buy the plant. And then we plant this completely in pumice. But what the question is, can you remove this soil so you have bare roots and then plant it in pumice? And the answer is yes, you can do that, but you don't have to. So I don't see the reason why you should do it, because by removing the soil here, you're actually doing not damage to the roots, but you are handling the roots. And if you're not very, very careful, you will be damaging them. And also, the longer time that the roots are up in the air like this, the longer time it's like that, the more they will decompose. What's really happening is that they lose their ability to suck up water. So if you do it, and I'm not saying that you should do it, you can do it, and if you do it as quickly as possible and make sure that you're not damaging any roots. But then you can plant it in pure pumice and it will work fine. But I don't see the reason for it. We always use it like this. We use the soil that it comes with, then plant it in pumice. And what happens is that over a period of a couple of years, this soil is going to decompose and practically just disappear. So you will have almost entirely pumice in the end as well, but you haven't damaged the roots, you haven't done anything to the roots. Question number 4. I have a poor nutrient soil mix consisting of cocoa coir, bark and perlite, but I have poor light conditions such as now in Sweden where I live. Do I need to fertilize my plants, or should I only fertilize when it's growing season with lots of light? Perfect question. We are going to make a all you need to know about fertilizer or nutrients for plants. That video is coming, but to answer this question here, and I will say, like I always say, you only give fertilizer or nutrients to plants that are feeling well. Now we covered that in a recent question here before. And I have to ask the question back to you as well. Why have you planted your plants in poor nutrient soil mix? Why haven't you used a better soil mix, or perhaps pumice or something else? That is my first question back to you. But if you have this planted like this, we always do like this. We only give nutrients or fertilizer during spring, summer, and a little bit into autumn. We never give nutrients wintertime. And the reason is that most plants, even if they're standing inside where you have almost the same conditions all year round, even if you have that, they will go a little bit dormant. They will not be as active, and that is because it will get a lot less light during the winter months. So if you continue adding fertilizer but the plant is dormant, what you're actually doing is you're adding a lot of salt to the water and to the soil mix you have. And the plant, it's dormant, it's not very active, which means it will not pick up all that nutrients, it will not use that nutrients. And eventually you will get too much salt or too much fertilizer in your soil. So no, I would not recommend you to use fertilizer or nutrients during winter time. But I would also ask you to consider to maybe repot your plants in better soil if you know that it's soil that are not very high on nutrients. Question number 5. My Dracaena marginata keeps losing the bottom leaves. They just go yellow and limp and then I pull them off. Is that normal? The top keeps growing new leaves, so the size of the crown doesn't change, only the bare stem is getting longer. This is fully normal on a Dracaena marginata. Now we're going to make a video on the Dracaena marginata, all you need to know video, so that is coming up. But I wanted to answer this question as well, because it is a very popular Dracaena. So a lot of people have this question about it. And this is fully normal. The Dracaena marginata has smaller leaves, smaller stems than the regular, like say the corn plant or the Dracaena massangiana. And this is a fully normal thing. The crown of a Dracaena marginata on each stem is almost always the same size. So it loses the bottom leaves and it keeps growing upwards and it gets a longer and a longer stem all the time. And every stem is doing exactly the same thing. So after a long period of time, the Dracaena marginata gets a very different look from all the other Dracaenas. It looks more like another plant family called Pleomele. Pleomele reflexa, for instance, is another plant that almost resembles that way. But this is fully normal as long as your marginata keeps on growing, it keeps on keeping the crown in the same size. Just keep doing what you're doing. This is normal. Question number 6. My corn plant used to have 12-inch long leaves. Now the leaves are about 24 to 28 inches long. What am I doing wrong? The answer is simple. You're not doing anything wrong. The corn plant, or the Dracaena massangiana, is a little bit different from a lot of the other Dracaenas in that the leaves doesn't stop growing. They continue to grow. Now, on a normal Dracaena or another Dracaena like this one, this is the Dracaena Janet Lind. The length of the leaves reaches a certain length and then it stops. Then the plant only grows through new leaves. But on a corn plant, the leaf itself keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And they can be really, really long and also quite wide as well. So this is fully normal. If you have a corn plant that has long, nice leaves, then you're just doing everything right. So you're doing nothing wrong. Just continue what you're doing. Question number 7. Could you, this is concerning our video about pumice or volcanic rock. Could you use this method with orchids? And the method she's talking about is planting your pots in pure pumice. Or not pure pumice, it's pumice mixed with clay and long-term nutrients. But pumice and not soil. Can you use this on orchids? And my answer is yes. We've used this and almost exclusively on Phalaenopsis hybrids, which is the most common type of orchid here in Sweden. It's used quite a lot. And it's also one of the orchids that flowers the longest as well. So that's why we're using it a lot. It works perfectly for orchids. And it works even better if you make a self-watering system with pumice and with an orchid. The roots love it. And it gets the perfect amount of moisture. I think that's why it works so well. So yes, you can use it on orchids. However, we only have experience on Phalaenopsis hybrids. So I can't recommend trying or I can recommend you trying other different types of orchids, but I can only say yes to the Phalaenopsis. And also, we have a all you need to know video on self-watering systems. And we have a video as well on the easiest way to make a self-watering system as well. And of course we have all you need to know about Phalaenopsis orchids, where we actually say that you can use pumice to this. So please go and check that out. Question number 8, and this is in Swedish, so I'll have to translate it into English for you. I have a large Dracaena which needs to be replanted and cut down. What should I do first? Or should I do both at the same time? This is depending completely on how your Dracaena is feeling, because I only recommend to repot and to make cuttings or cut down a Dracaena when it's feeling well. So if you're noticing that it's getting brown tips or something is wrong with it, you shouldn't do anything of this. But if your Dracaena is feeling well, I would recommend you to first cut it, let it start to regrow, and then repot it. You can do the other way around. However, I think that will take a little longer, because when you have repotted a plant, it takes a while for the root system to regrow in the new soil and to establish and to climate itself with the root system before you should do anything else with that. But since your plant has been standing where it has been standing for a very long time, you can make the cut first. Let it regrow, maybe add some nutrients as well, or fertilizer to help it to get that growth, and then you repot it when the cutting has started to regrow. Okay? Question number 9. I have a Dracaena and it has become very, very tall. I've seen the video to cut it, but at what time of the year should I do it? Always cut your Dracaena when it's feeling well. I've said this many, many times, but if you're able to pick a time of the year to do this, I would always recommend you to make the cut in the beginning of the growing season, which usually means that when winter is going over into spring and we're getting more light, the humidity inside is starting to become higher, that is when you go in and make the cut. Because that is when the plant is really gathering itself. It's picking all the nutrients, all the sugar it has, and it's going to just force it up to start to grow. And when you've made that cut, it will force all that into making new buds. And you will get hopefully 2 or 3 new stems from that cut. If you do it in autumn instead, when the plant is going dormant, when it's going to start to rest a little bit, if you make the cut then, the result will probably be that you will only get maybe 1 new bud. So if you want to get it as nice as possible, the best time of year is always in that small gap between winter and spring. So when it's getting ready to grow, that's when you make the cut. Question number 10, and this is also in Swedish, so I'll have to translate for you guys. Can I mix soil with pumice? And this is also concerning our video, all you need to know about pumice. And where we say that we plant entirely in pumice. We don't mix it with soil. And the answer is yes, you can mix pumice with soil. The mixture is going to be very good for planting, but by adding the soil to the pumice, you will not get all of those great things that I'm talking about in that video. Because a lot of the things about soil is the things that we don't want for our in-house plants. So by mixing them, you are actually adding some of the problems that we wanted to get rid of. One of the things is that soil actually sucks up a little bit too much water. And when it does that, it pushes away the air for the roots, and the roots can't breathe. So they will start to decompose and not function as well. So by adding the soil, you're actually adding that problem. But by mixing it with pumice, of course, it will get a little bit better. So yes, and here in Sweden, We use a mixture of pumice and soil a lot in outside containers, in outside pots where we plant season flowers and so on. One of the reasons is that pumice is quite expensive, so by mixing pumice and soil you get a mixture that is better than soil, not quite as good as only pumice, but it gets to be cheaper and easier to use. So that is one of the reasons. But yes, you can do it, but I would recommend you to try the only pumice version and watch that video in its complete to know exactly how you do that. That's all for today. I hope you've enjoyed these Q&A videos. We will try and make more. Just keep the questions coming. We read them all and we try to bunt them together and make videos for you where we answer your questions. Now don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that bell so that you will get a notification every time we put up something new. Until next time, hej då!